Ecuadorians have once again taken to the streets to reject the newly announced economic measures. The massive Black Lives Matter mobilizations across the United States and the rest of the world are on a scale not seen in decades. Most schools in South Africa welcome back students on Monday as COVID-19 restrictions are eased in the country. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, I'm Katrina Goss. Ecuadorians have once again taken to the streets to reject the newly announced economic measures. Two laws were recently approved by the National Assembly. The first seeks to flexibilize working hours in the country, and the second seeks to reduce salaries. Social organizations and trade unions are demanding that President Lenin Moreno reverse these economic measures, which they stress only hurt workers and social sectors. They also denounce the mass layoffs taking place across Ecuador since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Demonstrations took place in Brazil on Sunday to protest against racism and President Jair Bolsonaro's response to the coronavirus pandemic. Mobilizations were seen in the cities of Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo and Brasilia to denounce the killing of black people in Brazil and to support the Black Lives Matter movement. Protesters also called for justice for Brazilian politician, feminist and human rights activist Marielle Franco, assassinated 2 years ago in Rio de Janeiro. Meanwhile, the Brazilian government adopted the decision not to continue publishing all COVID-19 figures. The measure has been criticised as an attempt to conceal the true death toll in the country. Brazil has now officially reported over 690,000 coronavirus cases and more than 37,000 fatalities. Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez explained the ongoing lockdown process, which consists of a lifting of measures for a week before then re-establishing them for another. The measure seeks to prevent the spread of COVID-19 while also allowing the gradual resumption of economic activity across various sectors.
We must be very respectful towards all the measures taken by the President. One of those measures is the 7x7, 7 days of flexibilization that ended yesterday with the President's balance, and today the strict quarantine kicks off. As long as we respect these 7 days of quarantine, we may be able to reincorporate other areas of the country's economy. The level of responsibility and discipline is crucial. When we take care of ourselves, then we take care of others so that we can soon say it is thanks to the Venezuelan people that we were able to control this pandemic.
A shipment of humanitarian aid from Iran arrived in Venezuela to contain the spread of the coronavirus in the country. The sector vice president for planning, Ricardo Menendez, explained that the initiative is part of the cooperation mechanisms between the two nations to strengthen geopolitical peace. Menendez reported that the shipment contains various COVID-19 test kits and medical material. Venezuelan authorities have reported a total of 2,377 coronavirus cases, of which 83% are imported. Chilean health authorities reported over 6,400 new COVID-19 cases on Sunday, representing a record high. The latest figures bring the total number of cases identified to over 130,000, while the death toll stands at over 2,000. The Chilean health minister noted that over 1,300 patients are currently connected to ventilators, of which more than 370 remain in a critical condition. Meanwhile, quarantine has been declared in the Chilean cities of Calama and San Antonio starting this Tuesday. A Cuban medical brigade sent to the Italian city of Crema to combat the novel coronavirus has completed its mission and is on its way back to Cuba. 36 doctors, 15 nurses and a logistics specialist departed from Milan Malpensa airport after having spent 2 months helping to save lives in the Italian city. The medical brigade was greeted at the airport by Cuban ambassador to Italy, Jose Carlos Rodriguez, together with representatives of Cuba solidarity groups and Cuban residents in Italy. The brigade performed over 5,000 medical consultations, 3,600 nursing care acts, and was directly responsible for the recovery and discharge of 210 patients. The opposition People's Progressive Party was declared the winner of the March 2nd general and regional elections in Guyana after 3 months of delays and alleged irregularities during the polls. The Guyana Elections Commission confirmed the victory of presidential candidate Mohamed Irfan Ali after the recount of the final ballot box from the decisive Region 4 concluded on Sunday. The People's Progressive Party obtained 15,500 votes to secure the majority of the 65 seats in Guyana's National Assembly and beat its closest rival, a Partnership for National Unity Alliance for Change, to replace current President David Granger. The vote recount was monitored by representatives of all the 9 political parties that contested the elections, together with local observers, CARICOM and OAS representatives. More stories coming up after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The massive Black Lives Matter mobilisations across the United States and the rest of the world are on a scale not seen in decades. This Monday marks 2 full weeks since the first protests sparked by the police killing of George Floyd, and the demonstrations appear unlikely to stop anytime soon. In major cities across the world, streets and public squares are filled with people who have had enough of systemic racism and police brutality. Activists and scholars who have studied past mobilisations have noted that the widespread outrage over economic and racial injustice could make this movement more enduring than others. The Minneapolis City Council has pledged to dismantle the city's police department and replace it with a new system of public safety, representing a historic move that comes in the midst of the protests against police brutality sweeping the US.
Our commitment is to end our city's toxic relationship with the Minneapolis Police Department, to end policing as we know it.
Police are not the right response for a myriad of issues: mental health crises, domestic violence calls, opioid overdose. So there is an opportunity for us to be able to explore what our next steps. But really, we're going to be hitting 2021's budget very hard.
And following days of protests and widespread accounts of police misconduct in New York City, Mayor Bill de Blasio said Sunday that some funding would be moved from the police to youth initiatives and social services.
The Black, Latino, and Asian Caucus has called repeatedly for reconsideration of priorities. Now we're about to go into a budget process over these next few weeks to make the final decisions on the city budget. But I want to make a statement of principle right now that based on the suggestions of the caucus, based on the work of the task force, that we will be moving funding from the NYPD to youth initiatives and social services. The details will be worked out in the budget process in the weeks ahead. But I want people to understand that we are committed to shifting resources to ensure that the focus is on our young people. And I also will affirm, while doing that, we will only do it in a way that we are certain continues to ensure that this city will be safe.
Authorities in the United Kingdom have introduced a 2-week quarantine from Monday for anyone arriving from abroad in an attempt to limit the spread of the coronavirus. British residents and overseas visitors will have to comply with the 14-day self-isolation rules or face a £1,000 fine. Surprise visits will be used to check they are following the rules at the address previously supplied. The United Kingdom is the hardest hit by COVID-19 in Europe, yet the government is pushing to lift lockdown measures, with thousands of workers already forced to go back to work and primary schools reopened. Meanwhile, British Airways and budget carriers EasyJet and Ryanair have launched joint legal proceedings against the government over what they called a disproportionate and unfair step. The CEO of London's Heathrow Airport claimed the quarantine move could lead to the loss of 25,000 jobs, or a third of staff at the airport. Prosecutors in Spain's highest court are investigating whether former King Juan Carlos received millions of dollars in kickbacks from Saudi Arabia during the construction of a high-speed railway there by a Spanish consortium. The Supreme Court investigation will centre on developments after mid-2014 that cover the second phase of the 2011 contract for the bullet train between the Saudi cities of Medina and Mecca. The date marks the moment when Juan Carlos, marred by several scandals, passed on the throne to his son. By abdicating after nearly 4 decades on the throne, Juan Carlos lost the protection granted by Spain's constitution to the head of state. Although his finances have been questioned in Spanish media for years, there have so far been zero legal implications. Spanish lawmakers have rejected at least 2 proposals since the first allegations emerged to open parliamentary investigations. Authorities in the Russian capital have announced the lifting of the lockdown from Tuesday as the city gradually returns to normality. Our correspondent Alessandra Andres has the details.
Sí, muchas gracias, colega. Un gusto saludarte a esta hora a ti, a todos.
Yes, thanks a lot, colleague. It's nice greeting you and all the viewers who get their information from Telesur. Moscow will lift the coronavirus lockdown from tomorrow, June 9, as reported in the mayor of the Russian capital, Sergei Sobyanin, in his personal blog. Sobyanin stressed that Moscow is slowly returning to normal after the number of cases reported daily has dropped by almost half. As a result, all major restrictions will be lifted this June, provided that epidemiological safety is maintained and social distancing measures in public spaces are observed. In particular, starting June 9, beauty parlors, hairdressers, photo studios, veterinary clinics, and employment agencies will be able to open. The activities by non-governmental organizations, film and recording studios, and other scientific centers in the capital can be resumed. In addition, theaters, circuses, and concert institutions may also begin rehearsals. In addition, the mayor announced that all restrictions on carpooling will be lifted and Moscovites will be able to take the streets without restrictions. In other words, it will no longer be necessary to carry the digital permit. From June 16, the reopening of libraries, real estate agencies, rental services, and other services for citizens and companies will also be authorized, and museums, exhibitions, and zoos will also be able to open to the public. In addition, Sobyanin said that visits to sporting events will be authorized on the condition that the occupation of the stadiums does not exceed 10% of their capacity. This way, adequate social distance can be maintained, while in restaurants and cafeterias only the terrace area can be open. Finally, during the whole month of June, new measures will be implemented on different dates in order to normalize life in Russian capital. Of course, all these dates will depend on how the epidemiological situation evolves, but in general, the country is already returning to daily life to normality. Finally, Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin gave instructions to draw up a plan to see how international flights will resume, starting next July. This is all the information we have. We'll be back with you in the studio.
China hit back at US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo over his accusations that the country was capitalizing on civil unrest in the US. This comes as the Trump administration stepped up its anti-China rhetoric in regards to Beijing's response to the pandemic and its moves to enact more control over the special administrative region of Hong Kong. Without naming Pompeo, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Huan Chunying said that non-interference in internal affairs is a consistent basic principle of China's diplomacy. In a tweet, Pompeo accused China of attempting to exploit George Floyd's death and the anti-racism protests that have followed for its own political gain.
Unlike the U.S., non-interference in internal affairs is a consistent basic principle of China's diplomacy. We hope that all parties, including the U.S., will abide by this principle. The relevant U.S. politicians ignore serious problems in his own country and is obsessed with buck-passing games to shift responsibility, which is very immoral and will not help solve their own problems. We hope that he will not waste any more precious time.
Vietnam has ratified a significant trade deal with the European Union, which is expected to boost the country's manufacturing sector and exports as it recovers from a downturn caused by the coronavirus pandemic. Lawmakers approved the agreement after they met in the National Assembly for the first time since the pandemic began. The deal had been signed in Hanoi last June and was ratified by the European Parliament in February. When it takes effect next month, the EU will lift 85% of its tariffs on Vietnamese goods, while Vietnam will lift 49% of its import duties on EU exports and phase out the rest over the next 10 years. New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said on Monday that the nation has stopped the spread of the novel coronavirus after the last known infected person in the country recovered. The announcement came 17 days since the last new case of COVID-19 was reported in New Zealand. Monday also marked the first time since late February that there have been no active cases. Health officials have cautioned, however, that new cases could be imported into the country, which has closed its borders to everyone except its own citizens and residents.
We are confident we have eliminated transmission of the virus in New Zealand for now, but elimination is not a point in time. It is a sustained effort. We almost certainly will see cases here again. And I do want to say that again. We will almost certainly see cases here again. And that is not a sign that we have failed. It is a reality of this virus. But if and when that occurs, we have to make sure, and we are, that we are prepared. That's the reason our borders remain our first line of defence, as we aim not to import the virus.
And we're taking one final break now, but stay with us for more. Welcome back to From the South. The majority of schools in South Africa welcomed back students on Monday as COVID-19 restrictions were eased in the country. Pupils between grades 7 and 12 were the first to return to classes. Ahead of their return, hand sanitizer dispensers were installed and desks were separated to maintain social distancing measures. Over 48,000 people have tested positive for COVID-19 in South Africa, while 998 deaths have been reported. Algeria has joined other African countries in gradually easing its COVID-19 lockdown, despite its continuing spread in the continent. On Sunday, some economic sectors were allowed to reopen, including construction, public works and travel agencies. The second phase of the reopening is set to start on June 14th. The African continent has defied fears that it could fail to manage the pandemic, with numbers showing that it has dealt better with the outbreak than Europe, Asia and the Americas. Algeria ranks fourth in the continent in terms of the number of confirmed cases at over 10,000.
It is the first day of the confinement. People are still afraid. It seems that they are still confined.
Well, yes, that is very good news. Of course, after the confinement of 2 months, we stayed at home for 2 months, without playing sports, doing nothing, so we are very happy.
Places of worship, restaurants, malls and state borders across India will be reopened despite the fact that the country has just reported its highest single-day death toll. India's 10-week-long lockdown, one of the world's strictest, was considered effective in curbing the spread of the virus. But in recent weeks, as restrictions have been gradually relaxed to protect the economy, the number of cases has soared nationwide. India's health ministry reported over 8,000 new cases on Monday, raising a total to over 265,000, the sixth highest in the world. The ministry also reported more than 200 deaths, taking the COVID-19 death toll to over 7,000.
Ultimately, whenever we are not healthy, also we always pray to the God so that they keep us healthy, wealthy and prosper. So that link was missing somehow. Today when the temple was open, everybody in this was in a mood which you can say we cannot explain.
An Iranian scientist returned home Monday after his release from a US jail in what the Islamic Republic said was a prisoner exchange it hopes can be repeated between the two countries. Majid Tahari, an Iranian-American who had been working on cancer research at a clinic in Tampa, Florida, was detained in the United States for 16 months. Tahari was freed on Thursday as Iran released US Navy veteran Michael White, who had been detained in the country since July 2018. Upon his arrival in Tehran, Deputy Foreign Minister Hossein Jaberi Ansari stated that he hoped to see the release of other Iranians imprisoned abroad in the near future and added that his ministry would do its best to achieve this.
We hope that this process of the full release of all Iranian prisoners in the United States will continue. As we have repeatedly stated, Iran is fully prepared to exchange all prisoners, and the United States government is responsible for this procrastination.
Israel has begun military exercises on the border of the occupied Syrian region of the Golan Heights. According to local media, the maneuvers, for which an unspecified number of troops were deployed, will cover the territory where the villages of Sarait and Al-Aramashi are located in the Upper Galilee area bordering the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights since 1967. The same source has confirmed that the exercises, which will last until next Thursday, are included in this year's maneuver plans for the Israeli Defense Forces. June 8th is World Oceans Day, an occasion to celebrate the role of the oceans in our everyday life and inspire action to protect and sustainably use marine resources. The theme this year is Innovation for a Sustainable Ocean. And to mark the date, we end this news brief with a song to celebrate the ocean. Remember, you can get all the latest news on our website and social media. For Telesur English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.
mission for you and for me. You see, your mother, she has been suffering, and the truth is told beneath the sea. So raise your voices, sing like ocean waves crashing to the shore. This is our song for the ocean, Mother Earth, we are calling your name. We know you're taken for granted, but we stand here committed to change. The voices of children are singing towards tomorrow's horizon they gaze. Oh, this is our song for the ocean. Give us strength. Each and every voice will be counted, as each and every soul has a place, sharing on this beautiful planet. We need awareness, every decision we make. So raise your